the Happy Scientist podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happy scientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, PhD, bioscientist, and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Scientist podcast from Bitesize Bio. If you want to become a happier, healthier, and more productive scientist, you are in the right place. I'm Nick Oswald, the founder of bitesizebio.com, and with me is the driving force of this podcast, Kenneth Vogt, my friend, mentor, and founder of the coaching company Vera Claritas. Today's episode is on a topic that's a personal favorite of mine. It's called How to Manage Your Boss. So Ken, how do we manage our boss?
Well, I love that. It's one of your personal favorites because Nick is a boss, and here he's telling us he likes to be managed. I know a lot of people are afraid of that. They think, "Oh, I can't manage my boss. It works the other way around," And there's that old adage that everybody serves a master, and that's how we often look at a boss. Like they just have this almost unnatural control over me and over my life, and they take away my decision-making power, and they take away my freedom. And we paint all these negative pictures about somebody who is our boss. And part of that is just kind of memeing things, It's just making fun of a situation. But sometimes people are really afraid. And maybe it doesn't come to the surface as fear of their boss, but they fear the scenario. They fear the relationship. And they feel like they're at risk. I have to walk on eggshells around this person, or I have to kowtow to them. I have to genuflect at the altar every time I see them, And they don't know how to escape that, and they don't want to live that way. It's not making their career fun. And then other folks are looking at this going, "Man, I can't wait until I'm the boss. Oh, I'm gonna show these people, And again, that's not really a healthy attitude either. Now, it's one thing that it's like, look, I'd like to be the boss because I really think I can make some useful and important changes around here. And okay, that's great. Have ambition and have vision about what you want for the future. But for right now, your path to becoming a boss is going to be through dealing with your boss. And even if you don't want to be the boss, and you don't have to have that desire, there's lots of possibilities for your career. You could be headed on a more technical path where you're more concerned about becoming a senior scientist than becoming somebody who's in charge of other people. You're still going to have a boss, and you're going to need that boss. So the question to ask then is well, wait a minute. Why would I need to manage my boss? Well, think about it. What can your boss do for you? A lot of things. A boss can be a mentor. And if you're fortunate enough to have a boss who could serve as a mentor to you, that one that you really feel is qualified and that you appreciate, that's a wonderful scenario. But even if you don't have that, a boss can provide you with resources. The resources might be, things that take budget, like, equipment or new hires or things like that. But they also can assign resources, things that are already there. You can get access to lab time, you can get access to certain people, and all that'll come through your boss. And your boss will manage that. They'll handle that stuff for you if you bother to manage them. If you're making known to them the things that you need, and it's not just telling your boss your problems. A lot of times the boss doesn't want to hear about problems. What they want to hear about is solutions. So it's like, if you can say, "Look, I got this problem, but here's the solution I've come up with, and if you could do X for me, that'll take care of my problem." And they're like, "Oh, this is great. I didn't just have a problem dumped on me. All that's happening there is I'm being assigned a task." So So you might look at that and think, wait a minute, the boss assigns tasks. That's what they do. They do that all day long, and they get tired, and they'd love to escape from that, and to have somebody else finally tell them, so they don't have to make another decision, so that they don't have to come up with another solution. You're solving a problem for them. But again, just focusing on the part where this is for you and why you need to manage your boss. Think of all the things that your boss could do for you. Now, you might immediately click into a mode of, yeah, I can think of all the things I wish my boss would do for me because my boss isn't that great. Okay, good. It's still good for you to be aware of what is possible. And sometimes our attitude about our boss, thinking, oh, they don't do anything at all for me, not necessarily the truth. Perhaps you need to broaden your perspective a bit. Maybe you need to look a little more broadly and say, well, what does this person do for me? What do they get done for me? What have they already put in place that benefits me? And when you see that, you'll realize, okay, that's helpful. But now think about, what if you could have more influence over those things? And you can. It's just a matter of getting engaged with it and being aware of it. So we're going to talk today about how to develop that awareness, to how to sharpen your perception of what's going on, what you see in the relationship between you and your boss, and how to see things from your boss's perspective, and why that's useful, and give you a lot of tools that at the end of the day you'll realize, I can take this person in any direction I want to. They'll go anywhere I direct them. Now, and I'm not saying this in a way of like manipulating someone, because you can use this for evil. It's true, but don't use it for good. Use it to get your major objectives accomplished, and not just your objectives, but your boss's objectives, your lab group's objectives, your university's objectives, your company's objectives. You can be part of that whole process, and you can get noticed for that. And in managing your boss isn't going to feel controlled if you do it well. He's going to feel helped, or he or she. They're going to feel like, this is a person that I can work with. This is a person that I can entrust with resources. They're going to make good use of them. It's going to be a good investment on my part. So it'll all be helpful. So let me start with considering that you, dear listener, may be coming from different perspectives. And some of you, you don't have any direct reports of your own. You don't actually do any managing of anybody. So from your perspective, it's very clean. Every interaction with another person is always about somebody who is my superior. So everything I do is about managing a boss. So you might think, well, I'm the most powerless person around. It's like, no, you're the person with the least baggage. You can look straight at everything I'm doing is about managing a boss. So you can put your full focus into that. Now the next group of you will be some where you have some direct reports. Maybe you have a lab assistant. Maybe you have a grad student or are other folks that are under your assignment. And whether they're permanently under your assignment, that is that they directly report to you as their job title, or they report to you on the project. So now you're in a position where you're managing other people. You're going to, if they're any good at all, they're going to be attempting to manage you. So you get to see a perspective there. You get to be on the other side of it. Say, well, what happens when, man, this person is always telling me, I need more lab time. I need to have more time at the microscope. You got to give it to me. And you're like, man, this person is just crying about this all the time. They never let up. And then we'll realize, you could be that person to someone else. And how are you reacting to that approach? Whereas you have other people that seem easy to deal with. Like, well, this person's never really a problem. I mean, they do ask for things, but when they do, they come to me and say, hey, I need this because X, Y, and Z, and here's what I can offer in return. Now, you hear that and go, well, I like that. I like hearing that kind of stuff. That makes it easier for me. Then you realize, wait a minute, I could be doing that. I could do that with my boss or any number of bosses. And you may have more than one. So, you you start to see something. The third person is maybe you are the boss. You are Nick Oswald. Nick Oswald started Bitesize Bio, and he runs Bitesize Bio, and the buck stops here. And he's like, well, I don't know. I thought it was funny when Nick said, I like this episode, How to Manage Your Boss. And I thought, yeah, but you're not going to hear how to manage your boss. You're going to hear how to be managed, which might sound interesting to you, Nick. But you might think, well, but I don't have a boss to manage. But you know what, Nick? You do have a boss to manage. We all answer to somebody. And that somebody might be the customer or a client or whoever gave us the grant. It might be a head of a university. It might be a CEO of a company. Yeah, there's always somebody out there who ultimately is setting the agenda for what you need to accomplish. It might be the marketplace in general. I'm here to serve people who have this medical condition. There's always somebody there. And so you still have the opportunity to have some influence with them. And part of the process of having influence is to understand their perspective, and we're going to talk about that in some detail. So, having put that all out there, Nick, you still think this is one of your favorite episodes?
Yes. I would say that I've been on both sides of the equation, being now I'm the boss, but it just gives me a different perspective. I remember what I was like, and I was a terrible person to manage. I'm sorry to my other. Well, it depends. Different situations, it was different. But
yes, some I'm not sorry.
In some settings, I was not a good person to manage, and in some settings it was okay. But what it all boils down to is that whether you're the boss or whatever part of the team you are, you're part of a system that is trying to achieve a certain goal, and everyone has got in an ideal world has the same goal in mind, and everyone's just playing a different part. Like the different people in a football team all have different jobs, and it's the boss's job is to help make the team work better and to help make sure the team is reaching the goal that it needs to reach. And so feedback from the team is really important. You can't do it blindly. For me anyway, the feedback from my team is really important, because if I don't get feedback from them, if they don't transmit their pain to me when something's not working, and they just absorb it, that doesn't help me, because it doesn't help me to see what's going on and to fix it and to make it better.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, this segues well into the next point I wanted to make. So the question to ask is, what can you do for your boss? Your boss has you in their mind as you're a tool, but you're also an observer out there in the world. You're their eyes and ears. You're the person at the bench. You're the one seeing the most fundamental issues that have to do with whatever objective you're trying to achieve as a group. So you really are important to them, even if you have a boss that isn't evolved enough to realize they should treat you as important. You are important to them. Whether they value it or not is another issue. But even if they don't value it, you're still important to them from a practical standpoint. You still matter from a practical standpoint. So whether or not they get it, that's their problem. But you got to get it. You got to understand, I matter in this system, and it matters that I transmit good, clear information to my boss for the sake of the system. So if you have any hesitation to help a boss because you think this person's a jerk, this person is selfish, this person's a narcissist. Boy, we hear that kind of talk lately. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can make a big thing out of that. You can tell yourself all kinds of stories about what a horrible person your boss is, but they're probably not 100% horrible. They're probably not Hitler horrible. They're not Mao Zedong. They're not Stalin. They're not Pol Pot. They're not Idi Amin. There's a limit. It was like, all right, this person may have a lot of flaws, but they are basically doing the job. And that job needs to be done, and you need somebody to be doing that job. So now you got to think about this. All right, well, they need help to do their job. And you may be thinking there, like, oh boy, they sure do. Well, good. If that's the case, then help them. Now, I'm not talking about, don't be a sycophant here. It's not like, oh, just kowtow, do whatever they ask, whatever they tell you, just yes or no, sir. No, that's not it, because ultimately that's not to your advantage. You can't allow yourself to just be disappeared, like you don't exist, and your input was so insignificant that it isn't worthy of mention. You do want your efforts to be noticed, and not just by your boss, but maybe even beyond that. And it might be by your peers, it might be by other people in positions of authority, but the point is that if all you're doing is being a yes man, that doesn't serve your purpose. But that doesn't mean that you have to, you got to chest up and be all, well, I'm gonna do what I want, and I'm not gonna bend over for anybody. I'm not gonna serve anybody. Like, yeah, you are. We all are. Even your boss is serving somebody. And even Nick serves people. He is serving the community. So, we're all in service to others. And it's a good thing. And it doesn't have to be painful. So, don't confuse these, folks that are just being bootlickers. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually move the group forward, and it certainly doesn't move you forward. Okay, but putting all that part aside, you realize, okay, what could I do for my boss? Well, you could be a team player. You could look at teamwork and process it that through the lens of, how can I be a team player? How can I make the teamwork start with me? What can I do to be an example in my group to take things forward? So now that might look indirect, but if you show yourself to be a good team player on display in front of others, you're already helping your boss. And they're going to, even if they don't notice you personally, they're going to notice that impact. And they're going to care about that impact because it's good for them. So even if you think this person's just totally wrapped up in themselves and they're not going to even care about me, they may, even if they don't care about you, they will care about the results you're getting. So start pondering, what results could I be getting that would be useful to the boss, would be helpful in moving them forward and moving forward the project that they're being held responsible for. And ultimately that's going to help you. And the thing is, if your boss is noticing, especially if they're self-absorbed, well, then it's probably pretty obvious, and other people are going to notice too. So you're not doing this only for your boss. It's good for you too. And you gotta get clear in your head. If you have a boss that you really think is not a good boss, maybe you feel they shouldn't even have the position, or maybe you feel there are better choices for it. But it's what is right now. And you might think, well, I don't want to help this person because if I help them, they'll tend to succeed. And if they tend to succeed, they're going to keep this job. Well, you can't think that way. You can't be thinking, I don't want to help somebody who isn't perfect at their job. Because the job still needs to be done. And you still have your broader objectives. And who knows but that your being a good subordinate may help them become a better boss. So you may actually solve your problem that way. Maybe the solution isn't to get rid of them, but to help them get better at it. And you'd be amazed how often you can take a situation where you think, this is unsavable, this person, it cannot be fixed. And after a period of time, it gets better. And they get better. And you get more easy with the situation. And so, it comes down to this. exercise some humility in your work. And that doesn't mean sacrificing your self-respect, but recognizing, well, you know what? I am playing a certain role here, and better for me just to play it and not be telling myself all these stories about how unfair it is or how it should be different. Well, it's the way it is right now, so let's work with the way it is, and let's bother to see it from my boss's perspective to get a better understanding of what the situation is really all about, because each of us has a singular perspective. And that perspective is never the whole picture. Not ever. So if you can make the effort to see an additional perspective, and especially one that's a perspective that really matters in your world, like your boss's, you can get a much broader understanding of what's going on. And you'll be able to see problems coming sooner. You'll be able to handle problems more easily because you have a clear idea of how things are. So that leads us to this. It means you're going to have to get in your boss's head. You think, I've never been in my boss's head. Or, I don't want to be in my boss's head. I've seen that person. I must be scary in there. But you can't worry about that. You really do need to bother to understand their perspective. And this is especially important if this person is causing you problems or you don't like them. Because, those are the people you're like, I don't want to know what's going on in their messed up little world. Yeah, you really do. You want to understand. And I will warn you that you're going to have a little compassion. This is a person that's causing you problems, but now I got to feel sorry for them? And my answer is yes. and you know what? Think about that just for a second. Are you really going to lose anything if you feel sorry for a boss that's been oppressive or has been mean or has been selfish or has been inattentive? Is it really going to hurt you? I mean, cause you actual damage if you have some compassion for their situation? No. You're not going to lose anything. But on the contrary, you're going to gain something. You're going to start to get why they're being the way they're being. Behavior springs out of perception. When you see the world a certain way, it'll tell you what the logical response would be. What kind of action should I take if this is in fact how the world is? And when you see that in another person, you can also see it reflected back into yourself and go, why am I reacting the way I am? Why am I being so repulsed by a micromanaging boss? Why am I, getting angry about an inattentive boss? And you start to see connections then. It's like, because, the inattention or the micromanaging, that's just a thing. But why this reaction? Because other people are being micromanaged by them and they don't react like me. And other people are being ignored and they're not reacting like me. Well, it's because the perspectives of these people are different. And so you have a choice. Your perspective is not something that's chiseled in granite. It doesn't have to be the way it is. It's just what you have. And you can broaden it. And one of the easiest way to broaden your perspective is to take an example of something close to you, someone close to you in the situation, and say, how are they seeing it? What is the experience for my boss in this setting? I'm having my experience, and boy, I'm all about that. And you're going to be very, engaged in your own experience. And maybe not intellectually, maybe you haven't thought it through before, but you're deep in the experience. But if you start to think, well, how's the boss experiencing this? How is it different for them? And it's okay to go through the process of, for them it's easy. For them, they're like, yeah, shoot, all they got to do is snap their fingers and this has to change because they have the authority. Like, okay, go ahead and think about that for a minute. Okay, well, what if I had that? Well, how would it be different? Well, how would I see the world if that's how it was for me? And, that's the way you take it in. If you feel reticent to to feel what your boss is feeling or experience what your boss is experiencing or care about what he or she is experiencing. Make it, if I was in their position, how would I be feeling it? How would I be considering it? That's a segue in. If you feel like I can't be in my boss's head, I just don't get how they see the world. Well, then fine. Start by saying, if I was in their shoes, how would I see the world? And you're still going to get some insights, even though you two may be totally different. Just experiencing a new set of problems and a new set of perceptions is going to change your understanding, and it'll make it easier for you to do things for your boss that they will like, and it'll make it easier for you in the end to get them on your side. Okay. So one of the things to consider is that when you help your boss get what they want, it may help you get what you want. And especially if you put that if you make that an objective, like how can I connect what I need to what they need? You know, I need a certain piece of equipment. Well, show them how you having that equipment is going to allow you to get results they care about. So they can see the benefit to themselves, and make it easy for them to see the benefit to themselves. Don't just go, hey, I need X. Tell them, I need X, and here's what happens as a result. You know, that and list off the things that matter to them. And you can only do that after you have bothered to be in their head, see it from their perspective, and figure out what matters to them. Now, sometimes it's actually rather easy to know what matters to someone because they'll tell you. And many bosses will say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And we aren't listening, you know, because we're all caught up in what we care about and what our objectives are and what's going to make my job easier and all that. You have to bother to consider someone else's perspective. And and at first blush, that may feel like that's just an extra thing I have to do now. I never thought I had to do that. Now I'm stuck with having to understand how other people think. Well, welcome to real life, and welcome to a career. This is a career skill you need to develop, and it's useful. It is so worth the effort, and it makes all the difference. And anybody who has moved up the ladder has figured this out and has learned these things. And some of them, when you look at them and go, how on earth did they get there? Well, because they don't care about other people and all. I just can't imagine them sitting around thinking about other people's perspectives. Well, maybe they haven't directly, but they have intuitively. They have worked that in, and they've realized they have to do that. It has to happen. Now, another thing that happens when you do this, when you bother to get in your boss's head and start to figure out some things from their perspective, you're in a position to help other people understand your boss's needs. So maybe some of the other people you're working with who also answer to that boss, if you can give them some insight into how your boss operates, well, now you don't just have you against the boss, you have you plus your compatriots. You're all working at the same thing to manage your boss. So it gets easier to manage your boss when there's a group of you trying to manage your boss. Or maybe you can use that to be influential to peers of your boss, which again may help you. If you can get one of their peers to be on board with something that you need, they may help influence your boss too. So again, you have the opportunity here to reach out in all kinds of different directions. Once you understand your boss's needs, you can communicate that to others, and it can be very good for you. Now, here's a simple thing to think about. Once you've figured out what your boss needs, and now I know what is available for me as bargaining chips. I want X, I'll make sure they get Y. Great. So in a setting like that, what people often do is they'll say, I want X now, and later I'll give you Y. That's not the most compelling thing you can do. A better choice, if it's possible, is to say, I'm going to give you Y, but in the future, maybe soon in the future, or eventually, I would like X. In other words, do the giving first. Now, we had a whole episode about giving and not giving yourself away. And yeah, you can look back at that episode. Episode 30. Giving it all away. So, I am recommending that you give, but don't just give up everything. Make sure you get something for what you give, at least eventually. It doesn't have to be a transaction right now, but there's nothing wrong with a transactional relationship here when both sides feel like they got a good deal. We do that all day long. When you go in and you pay your $5 for that Starbucks latte, you are happy to give them $5 because it's worth more than $5 to you. They're happy to give you that latte because the $5 is worth more than a latte to them. Both sides are happy. And it's the same thing with any other kind of interaction you have. And the interactions you have with your boss, make sure that you're making a good deal for yourself. But often, if you can give first, and this takes some forethought, if you can give first, you're going to be in a stronger position. You'll actually be able to get a better, what you can get back can be more. If you expect them to give first, they're going to give less. It's just how it works. So consider, how can I give more? And then I had a note here that may sound kind of funny, but lead from the rear. That is, you don't have to take charge of everything, but you can, by example, kind of push things along rather than pulling. The boss's job is to pull. They're to pull everybody in a direction and pull everybody together. But if you're not that boss, fine, then you push. So you get behind and push things in the directions you'd like to see them go. And that pushing is going to be so much more effective if you've bothered to notice what matters to other people, and especially to your boss. So, one of the things that's helpful to get in your boss's head, you will find in episodes 4, 5, and 6. It's one of those. These are part of those foundational episodes we did. And those are the 3 episodes on recognizing the core mindsets that control your world. And I really recommend that you look back at those and listen to those episodes, because you will get some insights into how people in groups see the world differently. And you're going to recognize your boss fits into one of those groups. And they might fit into a different group than you're in. So it may not be your natural leaning to understand that group, but I'm sure you can understand that group. And if you listen to those episodes, you will. And if you can see it, then they're like, wait a minute. They don't see the world this way like I do. They see the world that way. Well, if they see the world that way, how would they experience this? And you will get all these ideas. It'll all come clear to you. You'll ding, ding, ding. Aha, this is why they are the way they are. And this is why they do what they do or say what they say, or why they're resistant to this and why they're open to that. And that'll really help you. The second thing to consider is what you find in episodes 7, 8, and 9. Giving you homework to do here. Look back at those. This is about how to discover and wield your charisma factors. See, you can move your boss by wielding charisma. Charisma works on everybody, including bosses. And you might look at this and go, well, I don't feel like I'm a very charismatic person. Well, I promise you do have some charisma. You just may not be aware of it. And again, you may not know where to look. And so if you listen to those episodes, you may hear some things that are going to clue you into like, aha, wait a minute, I do have that. And I can use that. And if you use your charisma, you use charisma so as to get other people to help you. There's nobody in your world that more directly will impact your work than your boss. They can provide you with a lot of help. So don't be afraid to use charisma. And I say use, not misuse. I'm not talking about manipulation here. I'm talking about how to properly interact with your boss in such a way that they're more likely to do what you want, to give you what you need. And if you've done your homework here, like we talked about, to bother to understand their position and to learn how to understand how they think, then you're going to be better at this. and you can get better and better at this. So, however good you are at it today, you can get better. So if you're dismal at it and you think there's no hope, oh man, there's low-hanging fruit. Trust me, it'll be easy for you to get better. If you're already pretty good at it, you can still get better, and you can still get better results. It just comes down to putting a little more focus into it, getting a little clear about what's right in front of you and what's available to you. So, Nick, I've monologued along for a while here. Any other things to add?
Yeah, so I just thought 2 points. One about, the perspective side of things that you're talking about. So you have a perspective, your boss has a perspective. You're both ostensibly shooting for the same goal. If you take it in a scientific lab context, for example, you're the one, say there's an important technique that's important to your lab, for generating results. You're the one with who's closest to doing the techniques, assuming your boss is in the office and you're at the bench. You are therefore are the one who's best placed to advise your boss if there's something that's inefficient about that, or maybe there's there's a cheaper way to do something, or maybe there's a new technology out that could do that better. You are one of the primary people who can transmit that potential improvement to the lab's systems and the lab's productivity, if you like, if you look at it in a raw way, back up to your boss. You could take the kind of subservient view and say, well, I can't do that. I don't know anything. He's the all-knowing master, or she, and I couldn't possibly put my oar in because I don't know anything. Or you could put it up the line and say, I recommend this. Here's why I recommend it, and that, and then you transmit the signal back up to the position in the organization that has the power to make that change. Now, whether you've done your job, because that you've transmitted that information. And now you might see one of several things happening. Maybe your boss says that's a great idea and does it. If you're talking about saving money, then the boss will do it. No bother. But you might get some resistance from your boss because they have a different perspective. They are the ones who can see what the budget of the lab is, for example. They can see the wider context other than just the work you're doing and so on. But it doesn't mean that you were wrong the issue is you putting that up the line. The issue is that signal that they've received is painful because it's not clear cut for them, or it bumps up against some other values that they have or other restrictions that they have. But that's their job to figure that out. I've found a lot that that sort of signals you get from the people actually doing the work is absolutely invaluable, but it's often painful to hear, or it's often difficult to hear, or it feels like it would be easier to just put it back down and say, you know what, we're not buying the new machine. You keep doing this by hand because it saves me cost and the hassle of implementing a new piece of machinery or equipment or whatever. And so the way that I see it is that a good boss is someone who absorbs that information and tries as much as possible to overcome their personal inhibitions or whatever, their own inhibitions about executing on the information they receive. To try and make the system overall better, even if it causes them pain to do so and work to do so and cost maybe. So for me, that would be my perspective on a major part of the boss sort of report relationship, is that it's not that one is right and one is wrong, or one has the power and one doesn't. It's a circle. It's a symbiosis, and you have to communication and listening and sharing ideas, and also taking the responsibility to act on what each other is saying is really important, because as a boss, the worst thing you can do is not listen, and just don't do anything to the system until it breaks, or until until it's so outdated or inefficient that it just doesn't work anymore. But you see that all around, so that's one aspect of it. The other thing is, especially in the scientific context, something that is really important to do and is often overlooked. And I say that because I overlooked it. I didn't overlook it. I allowed myself to overlook it because I wanted to get a position. And I didn't want to look at what was really under the hood. Is one of the really important things about managing your boss is to choose your boss wisely, and effectively, when you're being interviewed for a job, you interview the boss, because this is a relationship. It's not that you're getting the gift of the job. It's that you, even though it feels like that sometimes, it's that you need to interview for the position as much as the boss needs to interview for the position. And then you can, when you take some of the things that Ken said there into account, some of what are the bits where it becomes sticky, and then you with a boss, and you have to start then really digging in to yourself to kind of overcome the problems that a bad boss can cause you. You can avoid a lot of that by simply choosing, looking for that sort of thing when you're interviewing for the boss, and for when you're interviewing for the job, and also talk to the people in their lab and so on. A good boss will always let you go and talk to his people or her people, and you can really get the lowdown on what's happening. That sort of thing, especially in science, since you potentially, depending on where you're working, you can be switching boss quite often, and you can often have choice. Then you need to, one way to manage this is to find someone who fits your mindset and that you think you could work well with.
Sure. And a lot of you may be listening to this right now going, man, I wish Nick was my boss. But you know what? You're hearing the rosiest possible view right now, not because of Nick, because of yourself. Because you're hearing the potential for Nick to be a great boss. But you know what? Your boss probably has potential too, even if they're not perfect. So yeah, obviously pick well at the beginning, but once you got it, unless they're really getting in the way of your career, make this particular boss work, at least for now. And if they're really a problem, well, do a better job interviewing for the next boss. But you can help too.
Just saying on that, Ken, is that I have, in my personal opinion, in some ways I'm a good boss, in some ways I'm a bad boss, and but what I feel like I'm quite lucky to have is that I have people around me who will manage those bad bits for me. They'll push back on me, and they will, and then what I do is what I've kind of trained myself to do, or with your help, Ken, is to take that pushback and allow myself to be molded into a better boss. And but that couldn't happen if people didn't push back.
Right. Exactly. You're serving your boss when you push back. And I've had the opportunity to be a fly on the wall at Bitesize Bio and see that interaction between Nick and the people that report to him. And, it's gotten to the point now where, there was a point where Nick was everything. He did everything. And then he finally got some people to help. And so he was managing them. And then it was like, well, this is getting bigger. So he needed to move more into a director role where he had managers that reported to him, but their job was to manage. Well, now he's in a role where he's an executive, where he's got directors reporting to him. And it's each time that perspective has changed, but each time he still needs input from the people that report to him. And if they didn't do their job that way, he wouldn't be as good at it. So you are helping your boss's career if you do a good job managing your boss. And you might at first blush go, well, what do I care about that for? Well, because if you listen to the parts on charisma, because when you help other people, ultimately it helps you. And even if they only see helping you through the lens of their own selfish benefit, it doesn't matter. If they see benefit, they'll do it. They'll help you. So make them see benefits. And that's what Nick has done. He's learned to hear, things he doesn't want to hear, and sometimes you just have to, because generally speaking, that's just plugging you into reality. It's like, oh, I didn't want to hear that. Yeah, it's because you don't want to see what's actually there. Well, a lot of times we all have that. We all wish certain things would just go away, but that's not generally how reality works. So you can make it easier for your boss, and ultimately make it easier for yourself. So that's the objective here. Manage your boss for everyone's benefit.
So I just thought of a biological analogy. I like these. So it's very crude, but if you imagine the boss, and then the reports are a part of a team. The analogy is that the boss is the brain, taking all the signals in and deciding what the reactions are going to be, and so on. And downstream are the reports, which are the muscles. If the sensory nerves or whatever. Yeah. And if the signals don't go back up to the brain, then the brain has a limited set of information, so can't decide properly what to do next. And similarly, if the brain just doesn't listen to those signals, if it blocks off those signals, then the system doesn't work. But if there's proper signaling between the upstream and the downstream, then it can all work together, and it can keep improving. I don't know if that's a watertight analogy, but that's the sort of idea, is that it's a system, and every element of it, there's no one element of it that's more important than the other.
Yeah, and that's sometimes a hard concept for people to accept, because their knee-jerk reaction might be, I want to be of the brain. I don't want to just be the muscle. Like, well, every part is important. So don't look at another part with covetous envy. Like, oh, I want to be that. Well, okay, maybe you do want to be that, and you can work toward that. But for right now, you're the muscle. So be it and do it well. And realize that you can influence the brain. You're sending the signals to it. It's getting the data from you. So you can control, to a certain extent, what kind of, no, not control is not the right word, but you can influence to a certain extent how they're going to react. So make sure you do. Make sure you take charge of how you will influence that. Well, that I think is everything to be said on this topic for now, unless you got something else, Nick?
No, I think that was a great topic. I think it's really important to just understand where you what your role is in every team that you're in, and that goes with at work and at home and so on. It's you have a role, you have an effect on other people, regardless of what your position is, and making sure it's a positive one, and appreciating the positions of the other people in the group and the perspectives and the different worries they have and the different responsibilities they have. That's a good mindset for happiness inside and outside of the lab. Exactly. Yeah. So I was going to say something else, but for some reason it's gone. Never mind.
Next episode.
I'll put that in the next episode if it pops back up. Oh yeah, but that is what I was going to say. Again, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but one particular job, I worked in a small biotech, and I was an upstart 20-something, and thought I knew everything, and thought my boss was, pushed hard on my boss for certain things, and then learned later, after having spoken to him like many years later, of the pressure he was under to keep things going and so on. And I'm pushing really hard because I can see ways to make improvements and so on. And he's wondering how to keep the lights on. It's that different. That perspective it comes with experience, of course, and unfortunately age and all that. But it's good to just realize that it's not always the way it seems to you. There's the traditional view of the boss is all powerful. He's always trying to pull one over on his on the people who work for him. He's always trying to get as much out of them for as little as possible. Well, if you've chosen your boss wisely, if you've done your due diligence, it's not that. Or it might not be that. Just just keep your eyes open and just give them the benefit of the doubt and everything. I wish I could go back and slap that 20-something upstart on the head and say, come on, be grateful for the opportunity this person's giving you.
Oh yes. I wish somebody would have given me this episode when I was 20-something. Oh man, did I need it.
Well, hopefully it helps some people. Again, another great piece of wisdom from you, Ken. And thank you very much
Nick,
for putting it all together. And again, Ken mentioned those episodes 1 to 9, the foundational episodes. We mention them each week, just in case you haven't listened to them yet. If you haven't, go back. Episodes 1 to 9 of the podcast, and you can get them on bitesizebio.com/The Happy Scientist. Go back to episode 1 to 9, or you can get them on Spotify and Google and Apple and all those different podcast directories. We're on all of them. Whatever your favorite is, we are there. Go back to episodes 1 to 9, and Ken waxes lyrical for many hours about over those episodes about human needs, core mindsets, charisma factors, and all sorts of other concepts that will really help you to understand yourself and other people, and to get some handles on how you can improve things for yourself and the people around you. And also, we are on Facebook as usual, facebook.com/The Happy Scientist Club. Join us there, and we'll keep you updated on new episodes coming out, new ideas, and other things that will only be available on Facebook. That takes us to the end of this episode, and I'd just like to thank you again, Ken, for another great piece of insight.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye now.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.